The afternoon sun poured across my yard, warm and golden, and I felt a little swell of pride watching it all come together. The grill sizzled with smoky flavors, kids darted barefoot through the grass, and conversations overlapped in a soft hum that made everything feel alive. I caught a glimpse of Mark by the grill, beer in hand, looking relaxed, and I thought, this is exactly how family should feel. Safe, light, easy. For a moment, I let myself believe nothing could touch this peace. But life has a way of tipping the balance when you least expect it. I was setting down a tray of marinated chicken when the gate swung open and laughter rolled across the yard. Tom, Mark's cousin, strolled in with a wide grin, and beside him walked a woman I'd never seen before. She wasn't shy, not in the slightest. She walked as though she already belonged, flashing smiles that lingered a beat too long. And then I saw it. The quick, loaded glances she threw at Mark. A flicker in his eyes that told me this wasn't just any guest. My stomach tightened, and that quiet, familiar instinct whispered, "Pay attention." I smoothed my dress and put on my best hostess smile. "Hi, I'm Clara." "Welcome," I said, steady but curious. She grinned, sly and self-assured. "Oh, nice to meet you. I'm just a friend of Tom's." Just a friend. My eyes darted to Mark, and I didn't miss how he froze for half a second before forcing a laugh. "Well, I hope you enjoy yourself," I added, my tone light, my heart heavy. Mark jumped in too quickly, too loud. "Yeah, everyone's welcome here today." I smiled for the crowd, but inside, a knot twisted tighter, warning me that this day wouldn't stay perfect for long. I tried to keep myself busy, refilling drinks, checking on the grill, anything to drown out the buzzing in my chest. But every time I looked up, there she was, hovering just close enough to Mark to make my skin prickle. Her laughter rang too loudly at his jokes, the kind of laugh meant to claim territory. And when no one else was watching, her hand brushed his arm in a way that felt practiced. To everyone else, it looked harmless. To me, it screamed familiarity. I leaned against the table, catching my sister's eye from across the yard. She walked over, balancing a plate piled with food. I lowered my voice. "See her? Watch how she leans into him." My sister followed my gaze, then raised an eyebrow. "You're right, but don't do anything yet. Just watch." I nodded, but the effort of staying composed was like swallowing fire. My smile felt painted on, my voice a little too even, but I kept playing the part of the gracious hostess. Meanwhile, Mark avoided my eyes. Every time I turned toward him, he shifted, busying himself with the grill or striking up conversations with anyone but me. It wasn't guilt written across his face. It was fear. And the more I saw it, the more the pieces clicked. This wasn't their first meeting, not by a long shot, and deep down I already knew. Something dangerous was lurking right under the laughter of this barbecue. The woman finally walked up to me, plate in hand, her grin stretched just a little too wide. "This food is amazing," she said, her eyes sliding past me, straight to Mark. Her tone wasn't friendly. It was deliberate, a reminder that she knew more than she should. I held her gaze, smiled politely, and answered, "Glad you're enjoying yourself." On the surface, I was calm. Inside, every alarm bell in my body was ringing. I stole another glance at Mark, just in time to see him stiffen. His laugh came late, forced, like he was covering a slip he hadn't made yet. He kept busying himself with the grill, but his shoulders were tense, his eyes skimming the ground. I knew that look. I'd seen it once before when he'd lied about working late. The way he couldn't quite meet my eyes was the same. My gut twisted tighter, and suddenly, this barbecue felt less like a celebration and more like a stage for a truth I wasn't supposed to see. Still, I stayed quiet. I poured drinks, passed plates, kissed cheeks, all the while pretending everything was fine. But my smile was cracked, my heart beat too loud in my ears. I could feel the tension brewing, simmering beneath the laughter around me. And as I stood there watching the woman linger too close and Mark crumble beneath the weight of her presence, I realized something with absolute certainty. Today would not end the way it began. As the hours slipped by, I became an actress in my own home, smiling, chatting, serving food, yet my eyes never stopped scanning the space between Mark and her. Every detail was sharp, impossible to ignore. The way she tilted her head when he spoke, her hand resting on his arm a beat too long, the laughter that lingered as if she was trying to brand herself into his skin. And Mark, God, Mark, he didn't push her away. He didn't even try. I leaned close to my sister, my voice just above a whisper. See that? Look how she leans into him. That's not just a friend. My sister's brow furrowed, her fork pausing midair. She glanced over, studied them carefully, and murmured, "You're right. But don't do anything yet. Watch." Her calmness grounded me for a moment, but it didn't cool the heat rising in my chest. My patience felt like a thread pulled too thin. I wanted to scream, to demand answers right there under the string lights, but I forced myself to wait. Instead, I clutched my glass of wine tighter, letting its cool weight steady my hand. My smile didn't falter, but my eyes burned holes into every exchange between them. And when she leaned in, her voice low, saying, "Do you remember that night?" Oh, never mind. I caught it. The slip. The familiarity. And Mark's nervous laugh only sharpened the blade of truth pressing against me. I watched Mark fumble, his laugh too quick, his movements jittery as he reached for another drink. It was the kind of laugh that begged everyone to look away, to not ask questions. But I wasn't just anyone. I was his wife, and I could hear the tremor in his voice like a crack in glass. The woman smiled at him knowingly, her eyes dancing with secrets I wasn't meant to share. My blood ran hot, and yet I stayed seated, steady, determined to let the truth show itself. I caught Tom's expression once or twice too. He seemed distracted, avoiding my eyes as though he already knew more than he should. That realization cut deep, because betrayal never travels alone. It drags others in, even if they keep quiet. I folded my napkin slowly, pretending to adjust it on my lap, but really I was grounding myself, keeping my composure while the walls around me started to shift. The chatter around the table carried on, oblivious, but to me every sound felt muffled, like I was underwater. I zeroed in on them, their stolen looks, their stilted words, the pauses too heavy to be casual. My heart pounded harder with each one. They thought they were clever, hiding in plain sight. But I wasn't blind. I wasn't deaf. And the more I watched, the more I realized. The cracks in their facade were spreading fast, and I only had to wait for them to break wide open. I sipped my wine slowly, though my throat was dry. The sweetness clung to my tongue, but it couldn't wash away the bitterness rising in my chest. My eyes never left them, and when she leaned close enough to brush his arm again, I felt that twist deep inside me, anger mixed with heartbreak, sharp as broken glass. She thought no one saw. She thought I was blind, but I've always known how to read the spaces between words, the gestures people think slip unnoticed. Mark caught me watching once, just once, and his face went pale. He quickly turned away, mumbling something about checking the grill. My stomach clenched, because that was the tell I had been waiting for. If there was nothing between them, he'd have looked me straight in the eye. Instead, he ran. And in that silence, in that tiny act of avoidance, he told me more than words ever could. I sat back in my chair, pressing my nails into my palm beneath the tablecloth, grounding myself in the sting. My sister leaned close again, whispering, "Clara, don't react. Not yet." I nodded, but inside, I was already bracing for what I knew was coming. The mask was slipping, the act unraveling. It was only a matter of time before one of them tripped over their own lies, and when they did, I would be ready to catch every single shard of truth. The drinks kept flowing, and with every glass, her confidence grew louder. I could see it in the way her shoulders relaxed, the way her laugh stretched into something careless. That's the thing about secrets. Give them a little alcohol, a little spotlight, and they'll dance their way right out into the open. I kept myself calm, smiling, nodding at stories, but inside I was waiting for the crack that would split everything wide open. It happened faster than I thought. She leaned back in her chair, laughing so hard she nearly spilled her drink, and then she said it. "Oh, Mark, Remember when you burned yourself at that beach resort trying to light the grill? You were so dramatic. The words dropped heavy, slicing through the chatter around the table. My head snapped up so fast I nearly knocked over my glass. My pulse roared in my ears as I stared at her, then at him. Excuse me? My voice was calm, but it carried an edge sharp enough to cut. Which beach resort? We've never been to one together. The air shifted instantly. Forks clinked against plates, conversations faltered, and every eye turned toward us. Mark froze, his face tightening, scrambling for words that wouldn't come. My stomach sank, but my spine straightened. Finally, the truth was starting to crawl out of the shadows. Mark fumbled, his words tumbling out like loose stones. Oh, it was, a work thing, he muttered, eyes darting everywhere but mine. I locked onto him, refusing to let him escape behind that flimsy excuse. Funny, I said, my tone like ice. You never mentioned it to me. Ever. Around us, the air thickened, the barbecue chatter shrinking into a hush. Family members exchanged glances, some confused, others already suspicious. The woman shifted uncomfortably, realizing she had said too much. Her smirk faltered, but she tried to recover, swirling her drink as if it could erase the slip. Mark reached for my hand across the table, but I pulled it back, my chest tightening with betrayal. In that moment, it wasn't just about a scar or a story, it was proof. Proof that there was a whole part of his life I wasn't invited into, a part he had reserved for her. I could feel the sting of betrayal crystallizing inside me, hard and unshakable. My hands trembled under the table, hidden from sight, but my face stayed calm, almost too calm. I knew everyone was watching, but I didn't care. This wasn't about embarrassment anymore. This was about the truth that had been shoved in my face, and I wasn't about to look away. Not now, not ever again. The table had gone silent, the kind of silence that presses down on your shoulders. I scanned the faces, my aunt staring at her plate, my cousin frozen mid-bite, my sister's eyes locked on me with quiet fury on my behalf. And then there was Mark, shifting in his chair, his jaw tight, his palms sweaty against the wood. He wanted to speak, to spin another excuse, but the words wouldn't come. He was cornered, and he knew it. I turned my attention back to her, watching how she tried to mask her slip with another laugh. It didn't work. Her eyes flicked to Mark, desperate for him to save her, but he couldn't. Not this time. My voice cut through the air again, calm but heavy. It's strange, isn't it? How scars tell stories. Stories only the right people are supposed to know. My words weren't just for her. They were for everyone sitting there, witnessing the cracks in my marriage widen in real time. Mark rubbed the back of his neck, muttering something about grilling more food, but no one moved, no one breathed. I held his gaze for the first time that afternoon, steady and unflinching. And in that stare, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this betrayal stay hidden in the shadows of polite smiles. The time for silence was over, and the confrontation was no longer a question of if. It was a matter of when. I had reached my limit. The fake smiles, the nervous laughter, the way everyone pretended not to notice the storm brewing at the table, it all snapped something inside me. My heart was pounding, but my voice came out steady, almost too steady. I rose from my chair, holding my glass firmly, and said, "Everyone, may I have your attention?" Heads turned, forks stilled, and I felt the weight of every eye on me. I looked straight at her, then at Mark. I'd like to know why this so-called friend of Tom's seems to know details about my husband that even I don't. My words hung in the air like smoke, impossible to ignore. Mark's face drained of color, his mouth opening but no sound coming out. He stammered, "Clara, please, not here." But I didn't flinch. The time for secrets was over. The woman leaned back in her chair, her lips curling into a smug little smile. "Oh, come on," she said, almost laughing. "He promised me he'd leave you. He said I was the one." A gasp rippled through the table, shock tightening the air. My chest burned, but my spine held firm. I wasn't going to crumble in front of them. No, I was going to stand taller than ever. Gasps echoed around the table, sharp enough to slice through the night air. My uncle's fork clattered to his plate, and someone whispered, "What?" as though they couldn't believe what they'd just heard. But I believed it. I'd felt it in my bones long before her words gave it shape. My throat tightened, but my tears stayed locked behind sheer will. I wanted them all to see me steady, not broken. Mark shot up from his chair, his voice desperate. "Clara, it's not what you think. Please, let's talk privately." His hand reached out toward me, but I stepped back, my jaw firm. "Privately?" I said, my voice carrying across the table. "No, Mark. You've already made it public. You brought this humiliation into my home, in front of my family. We're not hiding this anymore." His face crumpled, panic etched in every line. The woman crossed her arms, her smirk fading into something meaner. "Well," she said with a shrug, "at least now she knows." The cruelty in her tone only fueled me. I steadied myself, glancing around the table at the stunned faces of my family, their silence louder than any judgment. This wasn't just my betrayal. It had spilled into their world too, staining the air we all shared. And in that silence, I felt my resolve harden like steel. I felt my hands trembling, but my voice stayed calm, steady, almost unnervingly so. "I guess the truth finally made it to the barbecue," I said, the words rolling out heavier than I expected. Around me, gasps filled the yard. My sister covered her mouth with her hand, my father's brow furrowed in anger, and even Tom shifted uncomfortably in his seat, regret flickering across his face. Every eye was on Mark now, and there was no escape left for him. He opened his mouth again, pleading, "Clara, please, just let me explain." But his excuses felt smaller with every word. I stood taller, refusing to let his desperation pull me back in. I wasn't that woman anymore, the one who turned her head when things didn't add up. I had given him trust, years of it, and he had gambled it away for stolen glances and whispered promises under someone else's perfume. The woman rolled her eyes, as though she had already won, but she hadn't counted on me finding my voice. For the first time in a long time, I felt my power rise to meet me. And as I looked around, seeing the disappointment in my family's eyes, disappointment not for me, but for him, I knew this moment wasn't the end of the story. No, this was just the beginning of the reckoning he never saw coming. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I simply straightened my shoulders and let the silence speak for me. Mark stood there, stammering, begging with his eyes, but the damage was already carved too deep. I looked him square in the face and said, "You thought you could humiliate me quietly, but today, I've taken back my power. Pack your things, Mark. You don't live here anymore." The words landed like thunder, and I felt a rush of clarity wash over me. He reached for me, his voice breaking. "Clara, please, let me explain." His hand hovered in the air, desperate, trembling, but I stepped back, keeping the distance between us firm. "There's nothing to explain," I replied, my tone cold, final. "You all saw the truth with your own eyes." My family nodded subtly, their silence a collective judgment that left him exposed, stripped of the lies he'd clung to. I thought I would feel shattered in that moment, but instead I felt strong. My chest rose with every steady breath, my feet rooted firmly in the ground. I had already planned my next steps. The accounts with both our names, frozen, his access to the home, cut off, his reputation in this family, done. I wasn't just walking away, I was making sure the ground he stood on crumbled beneath him, and he knew it. Mark's face drained of color as my words settled over the yard. He looked from me to my family, desperate for an ally, but all he found were lowered eyes and clenched jaws. Even Tom couldn't meet his gaze, shame radiating off him. That silence, the silence of people who had seen the truth with their own eyes, was louder than any scream I could have unleashed. And for the first time, I saw Mark truly alone. I turned to my sister, who stood quietly at my side, her hand brushing against mine in quiet solidarity. That tiny gesture anchored me, gave me the strength to keep my head high. "It's done," I whispered, but loud enough for everyone to hear. Mark reached for me again, voice cracking. "Clara, don't do this. Please, I'll fix it." but his pleas only rang hollow, echoing against the walls of a trust he had demolished himself. I walked toward the house, every step deliberate, the gravel crunching beneath my heels like punctuation. Behind me, I could feel their eyes on my back, his full of desperation, hers dripping with smugness that was quickly fading, and my family's filled with quiet respect. I wasn't running. I wasn't hiding. I was claiming the power he thought I'd never dare to take back. And with each step, I knew my revenge was no longer just a thought. It was already in motion. I called my lawyer that evening from the porch, the phone warm against my palm as the backyard lights blinked on one by one. By morning, our joint accounts were frozen, access revoked, and the little conveniences he'd taken for granted, my car, his credit cards, were no longer his to use. I sent a calm message to the family group chat explaining what had happened, not begging or pleading, just the facts laid out clean and simple. Watching the red receipts pop up felt like watching dominoes fall, alliances shift, sympathy surface, and reputations settle where they deserved to. It wasn't flashy, it was practical and immovable, and that steadiness felt like justice. When he tried to come back that night, dragging boxes with shaking hands, it was the sight of relatives avoiding him that finished the work I'd started. Aunt June refused to help carry a single bag. Tom hovered awkwardly at the curb as if ashamed of his own shadow. He stood on my doorstep, surrounded by the soft glow of the porch light, pleading for mercy while neighbors pretended not to see. I opened the door just wide enough to tell him to gather what he needed and go, then shut it, the click louder than anything he'd ever said to me. There was no dramatic finale, no scene of screaming, just a quiet, absolute unmaking of the life he'd assumed he could keep. In the months that followed, I rebuilt in small, deliberate ways. A meeting with a financial advisor, a new routine that didn't include his shoes by the door, weekend coffee runs that became mine again. Family events returned, but now I sat with my sister, laughing freely, my smile no longer a mask. Mark became a name people lowered in conversation, a cautionary tale told in hushed tones. And as I learned to enjoy my own company, the bitter edges of betrayal dulled into something like clarity. I hadn't wanted revenge for the spectacle. I wanted to reclaim myself, and in doing so, I found a peace that felt stronger than any victory over him. Months later, I stood in the same backyard, the smell of grilled food in the air. But this time, my laughter wasn't forced. My family gathered around me, their conversations light, their smiles genuine, and for the first time in what felt like years, I felt weightless. There was no knot in my stomach, no quick glance to check Mark's expression, no stranger's eyes lingering too long on what was mine. It was just us, and it was enough. My sister wrapped her arms around me, squeezing tight. "You're glowing again," she said softly, pulling back just enough to meet my eyes. "It's like you've been set free." I laughed, the sound real and unshaken, and I realized she was right. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. My reflection in her smile was proof of it, proof that strength doesn't always come with noise. Sometimes it comes with quiet rebuilding. I picked up a glass of wine, holding it up toward the fading sky. "I finally learned," I said with a small smile. "Sometimes the best revenge is simply walking away and living better." Heads nodded, glasses lifted, and warmth spread through my chest. Not from the drink, but from the certainty that I had taken back my life. Mark was gone, isolated in the silence he'd created, while I stood here surrounded by love, stronger than ever. And that, I knew, was the sweetest victory of all.